I am a 14-year-old boy from Ohio, and I frequently spend time playing in the woods. It all started when I was exploring a new part of an area in the woods. While we were walking down the muddy and slippery trail, I started to hear talking. Now, granted that I have a wild imagination, I know this wasn't in my head because my friend looked over and he had a "who are they" expression. As we got closer, I could smell the smell of weed in the air. Now, I don't live in the greatest of neighborhoods, so this wasn't that uncommon. After smelling it, I spoke softly to my friend and said, "Let's get out of here, like, right now." But he was intently listening to the conversation they were having, and he wanted to get closer. I said, "Why the hell would you want to get closer? Let's leave now." But he was already moving in, so I had to go with him because I didn't want to leave him there. As we moved closer, I started to hear the conversation better and clearer. The people said, "Where are we going to put the body?" The first man said, in a deep and grumbling voice, "Don't worry about it. The coyotes will just get it." But that's when my friend made the mistake of moving a branch. I, being the older one, told them to run while I ran down the opposite direction. The two men started to chase after me, and when they stopped to catch their breath, I took a chance to climb a tree. I must have climbed 20 to 30 feet up. When the men rounded the corner, they ran right past me. About 10 minutes had passed, and I heard them coming back again, so I held my breath. They went right past me again, and I counted until it had been 10 minutes, and then tried to climb down the tree. I then ran as fast as I could up the path and through my friend's yard, and he was there waiting. I told him not to tell his parents because I still wanted to go around that area, but since then, I actually never have. I used to hear tons of stories about ghosts, and I also watched a lot of horror movies, but since I never had anything or any ghost stuff happen to me, I figured they weren't real. Let's get to the actual story. One day, me and my two friends visited the spooky forest. Not nearby, but we managed to get there just to check it out because we loved the natural atmosphere. The time we reached there was about 7 p.m., and it was already getting dark. There was no light source in the forest except the entrance and exit of the forest area. It was much darker than we expected. My friend had his Apple, and I had my tablet with dual flash, so we decided to use it to at least see each other. An hour passed by having conversations and smoking cigarettes, and we were there sitting under a tree. We were having a great time until we started hearing a sound, like two rocks smashing into each other, or one rock smashing on the ground again and again. We were pretty confused. I told my friend that it must be a cat trying to climb a tree, making the weak branches fall off, but it didn't stop for like 3 or 4 minutes, and now, after some minutes, it had stopped for a while. Things went silent for 5 minutes. We started our conversation about the forest atmosphere because it was so windy and cold. Then apparently a rock fell on my friend's head, and I wondered how a rock could get up there on the tree. Just in 4 to 5 seconds, a big branch from the tree fell on my lap, scaring the hell out of me. And then, my friend also felt water drops falling on his neck from up the tree. I started to wonder how there was a chance of water dropping down a tree when the rainy season was over 2 months ago. This night was clearly not our lucky night, as we heard the same sound of the rock smash again. But now, it sounded like it was getting closer. Immediately, without any options to choose, we decided to run out from the forest, and then, from there, we left the forest safe and sound. After a few days, one of our friends posted a story about that same forest. There was a huge tower, like a lighthouse, as said by the post, and we saw that tower from a distance, but didn't get any closer as it was a rocky area. In the post, a boy was passing by the tower, and the first thing he saw was a person, but only his head. The post also said the police couldn't find the body, but just the head of the man, which was already found by that person. The question is, what happened to this guy? How in the world could this ever happen to someone? And the weird experience we had a few days ago in the same forest, was this the same guy doing it, but just after death? I lived with my parents and my younger sister of 17 at the time. One day after work, I was arriving at my house and there was a strong windstorm going on. It was so strong that some trees fell off and the streets were full of leaves and pine needles. At the other side of the street, there's an empty lot with nothing built in it and a wall that divides my residential from it. While I was looking at all the pine needles that piled up, I realized that although I got my neighbors at the both sides of my house, the leaves and the needles were only piled up in front of mine. I knew that no one had cleaned up their part of the street because it was still winding hard when I got home. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the wind stopped and the air seemed still for a bit. It started to get dark, but the lightning around my house seemed strange, and that's when I felt as if someone was watching me. I started to feel sick and dizzy and started seeing fireworks around my vision. I'd overcome some hardships in my life and I was relatively strong-willed, so I held myself against my car and stumbled to my house door after almost passing out. Once inside of my home, I laid on the floor and tried to recompose myself. I've had high blood pressure ever since I was 16, so I didn't think about it much. After several minutes staring at my door from the inside, I got up and I locked the door. Hours later, I was playing League of Legends with my sister when I noticed some movement in the empty terrain in front of my house. That's when, without letting out a gasp, I saw it. A tall, white figure with no eyes or facial features. It looked like it was wearing some sort of black shirt, and there were shadows creeping from behind him. I turned to look at my sister to make sure she was okay, and when I looked back to the terrain, it was empty. 1 week went on, and I still had a feeling of dread every time I was outside of my house. When I arrived home one of these days, it was still strangely clear, while other days at the same time, it was usually dark. One night, when I had gotten home, I noticed one of my neighbors screaming "go away" and closing her window fiercely. I was startled for a moment, but I just went straight into my home. I've never said anything about it to anyone, but the next day, my sister came to me worried. She said she had a nightmare and could see a white figure in her nightmare, which immediately gave me chills across my spine, and I felt dizzy again. Every night from then on whenever I would go to sleep, I would also see that figure in my nightmares. Something wasn't right about this place, and it never has been since then.